Welcome. Read A Course in Miracles along with us in our home-style text class. For information about our live workbook classes, email us and check out our website for more course support, including retreats at the Little Garden in Sedona.
So good morning, Jen. What
Good
are we
morning,
doing?
honey. We're doing Chapter 12, Section 3 in A Course in Miracles. It's called The Investment in Reality.
Yeah.
We really kind of got blown away by this section when we were studying it together. Like the stuff, let's see, on the third page, let's just say that. It's just like shocking to the system.
Split mind,
Projection.
the world around us, all the connection.
Where is the world?
Right.
Yeah.
But really emphasizes is that the mind cannot take the split between fear and love.
Yeah.
And he's building on what he had in the prior chapter, that your great need is need in perception.
Uh-huh.
And if you get guided to true perception, then the real world is the only world that we real. And the real world is one of love. Calls for love or love itself.
Yep. The only purpose of the real world is forgiveness.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
it's a great section in that.
yeah,
sense.
it's a really good section. And we were relating it to some of the lessons. So we might bring that in.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get going on it.
All right.
So the first line refers to, I'm just giving you this in advance. The first line refers to the story in the Bible where a rich young man came to Jesus and said, I want to follow you. And Jesus said, well, sell all your goods and give the money to the poor and follow me. And it says the rich young man went away sadly because he didn't want to give up his identity in the world. He didn't want to give up his goods. So this is a reinterpretation of that.
Yeah. So a real understanding of what poverty means. It doesn't have to do with abundance or lack of worldly resources.
Yes.
Your real poverty is how you're identifying yourself.
Yes.
Because identification is salvation.
Okay, let's go.
All right.
So Dale, you're up first.
Me? You say me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. I want to ask you to sell all you have and give to the poor and follow me. This is what I meant. If you have no investment in anything in this world, you can teach the poor where their treasure is. The poor are merely those who have invested wrongly, and they are poor indeed. I'm assuming we're talking about poor in spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, they've invested wrongly, and he's gonna tell us what that means.
Because they are in need, it is given to you to help them, since you are among them. Consider how perfectly your lesson would be learned if you are unwilling to share their poverty. For poverty is lack, and there is but one lack, since there is but one need. Well, a couple of things. The first thing that jumps out to me is how we share that.
Exactly.
You know, I've tried in the past to share what I thought was wonderful information with people, and it was received very poorly.
Yeah.
Because it challenges their beliefs and their understandings. So I've just gone to, that's not my role. My role is to just extend love to them and let Holy Spirit do the work.
Yeah.
Great.
That's kind of what I got from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're gonna see as we go along that the only lack they have, or the only need they have, the only poverty they have is love.
Lack of it and fear.
Mhm.
So take a look at 1:4. Because they are in need, it is given you to help them, since you are among them. Well, this is what he said in the section before this. The way to remember God is it God cannot be remembered alone.
Mhm.
And that's why it's the sharing of forgiveness. It's the sharing of salvation by which we learn that it's for us too.
Mhm.
But we have to share it, because
Mhm.
it's not just for the ego to be saved.
Right.
It's for everyone to be healed. So you can't remember God alone. And it's this, since we have chosen the same poverty that they have, ego identification, we can help them.
Right. So ego identification is the poverty.
Yeah.
It's like, and I know we can see rich people who are desperate, right? Feeling empty, feeling the need to constantly acquire more goods or more esteem of the world or whatever.
Better situations, better circumstances, all those things.
That's poverty.
Yeah.
That's lack.
Right. And like you said, it doesn't mean that if we've accepted the true richness, then there may be changes outside.
Oh yeah, that's a separate issue.
Yeah.
It's like, get your mind straight, and then you'll be able to hear guidance as to what to do. You know, give the beggar on the street $5 or whatever. It doesn't preclude that. It's just like, that's not the point.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It is, like you always point out, definitions for poverty is lack.
Yeah.
Right. That is the, that is the poverty, is the sense that I'm incomplete, that I'm not whole, all of those things. That's the poverty.
Right. And there's one lack, since there is one need. And of course, that one need is for, you could call it salvation, you could call it peace, love, the remembrance of God.
Right.
There's a lot of different words for it, but that's the one need. It's an internal thing.
And that's why the idea of peace is the absence of conflict. So if I'm no longer in conflict with the world around me, then I have peace. Yeah.
So are we kind of straight on the basis here, which is the first paragraph? Questions about that or comments? Let's have Laura read.
Laura had a
Yeah,
question.
well, that's great. So I'll just say it before we move on. So it's funny because in Pathways call today, we read section 9 in chapter 26, which is For They Have Come. And it's talking all about you should be grateful for your brothers because you can't find God without them. That's my summary. I'm sure you guys have a better explanation, but I was like, oh, how coincidental.
Yeah. It all ties in together, doesn't it?
Yeah,
The whole
absolutely.
course. Yeah. Okay, would you read 2, please, and give us your thoughts?
Suppose a brother insists on you having you do something you think you do not want to do. His very insistence should tell you that he believes salvation lies in it. If you insist on refusing and experience a quick response of opposition, you are believing that your salvation lies in not doing it. You then are making the same mistake he is and are making his error real to both of you. Insistence means investment, and what you invest in is always related to your notion of salvation. The question is always twofold. First, what is to be saved? And second, how can it be saved?
Those are good questions.
Yeah, right. So this is just anything. So is this would this be an example of trying to buy into someone who is fearful? And like say they're insisting on, well, I need this to make me safe in form. Is that what that first sentence is about? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I suppose then if we're looking for something external for our safety or to relieve our fear, that means that we are not believing in who we really are.
Exactly.
Which is the what, right? So let's go to those questions, and that's line 6. What is to be saved? And well, I suppose be interested to hear your thoughts. I suppose we really are already saved. I think we just don't remember that, right? So it's not like we are a lost soul and that we need salvation. Salvation is just coming back to oneness, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's already here.
He's going to answer that question coming up here, but let's look at this idea of opposition. Like, you think it should be done this way. Say in parenting, because that comes up a lot, or any relationship with someone where you have different ideas.
Mhm.
And you're going like, no, the children should be taught this way. No, the children should be taught this way. No, this, like that kind of thing. And
It
that
always comes from ego.
right. And it just creates the conflict of opposition,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And so your idea is coming from the ego as their idea is coming from the ego.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why he's going to set up what is to be saved and how is it to be saved.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that paragraph? Okay, so I think we could get that. If somebody tells you to do something and you say, no, it's got to be my way, well, you're coming from ego. Okay.
Now,
There
I
we go.
do have to mention though, that he addresses the same thing
Oh, yeah.
at the beginning of chapter 16, where he refers to this,
Yeah.
but he's also saying, don't do anything that would hurt them, but don't do anything that would hurt you either.
Right.
So it's not like, oh, I need to keep married to this abuser because I'm just supposed to forgive them or something. Or I should just stay in the situation and just change my mind
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah. If it hurts you,
Don't do anything that would hurt you
Yeah.
too. So anyways, because it can get really confusing about this idea of how am I supposed to respond to their calls for love?
see, the example I thought of was that, you bring the car home and it has no gas in it. And
Yeah.
I get,
And you
And then you
forgot
go
to give
like-
me the money to put it in.
right, like that, it's like, that is total ego. If that happens, it's just like, okay, go out and get some gas, like that. Okay.
Sentence 5 is interesting. Insistence means investment, and what you invest in is always related to your notion of salvation.
Yeah.
But it's like we don't realize that, do we? We insist upon something. Something seems right to us, and that's got to be done that way, really, because it's not right otherwise.
Yeah.
But we don't realize that that's how that relates to our notion of salvation.
Yeah.
We just think it's just like, well, it's just something that's happening in the world that we can just, it's better that way.
Yeah,
That's right.
Just
So it's
not
quite subtly disguised, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
yeah.
But you can tell by how you feel.
Yeah.
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 I mean, that's been the recent idea in the workbook lessons, is this very thing I'm doing to defend myself is an attack on myself.
Yeah,
And it seems natural.
I know. Okay. Kathy, would you read 3, please?
Sure. When you become angry with a brother for whatever reason, you are believing that the ego is to be saved and to be saved by attack. If he attacks, you are agreeing with this belief. And if you attack, you are reinforcing it. Remember that those who attack are poor. The poverty asks for gifts, not for further impoverishment. You could help them as surely acting destructively if you accept their poverty as yours. You would help them as surely acting destructively if you accept their poverty as yours. If you had not invested as they had, it would never occur to you to overlook their need. I find that a little confusing.
Yeah, it is. The mind, that's why the course is always saying, this is a very simple course.
It is.
And when it articulates its ideas, I go, what? What? You mean I'm free? What? Like that?
Yeah. Okay. So remember that those who attack are poor. That is the definition of poor. It's not about their money or their possessions. It's the fact that they're investing in the ego. So this whole investment thing is an analogy. So if they're attacking, they believe that they're poor. Their poverty asks for gifts. It's asking for love. It's a call for love.
Rather than, again, attacking back. And now we're
Exactly.
now we're in opposition. You have one idea, I have another.
Yes.
Now we're in opposition.
Right.
But if I recognize that the problem is completely inside my mind, when I solve that, then I'll find the wisdom to get you to do it my way.
No, 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 don't say that. I know that was a joke, but don't be confused.
It was a joke.
It was a joke,
It
no.
was funny, you know.
Yeah, it was funny, but only because it's, it's the
No,
way
it's-
the ego thinks.
Right.
So you who could help them, so they're angry at you, you could help them. Only if you've invested in the ego would it occur to you to overlook the fact that they're calling for love. Does that make sense?
So that's 3, 4. Their poverty. They're identifying with the ego.
Yeah,
That's their poverty.
yes,
It is asking you to meet their need, their true need,
mhm,
which isn't correcting them or their personality. Their true need is their call for love, which you can answer.
So, okay, so to continue with the gas analogy, you come home, there's no gas in the car, and instead of getting irritated with you, I say, oh, okay, I give you love and gas, right? It's like, okay, just meet the need, because I'm not invested in it's got to be done exactly the right way. We were talking this morning about all the laws, like putting the fork in the wrong place in the silverware drawer.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, there's a law about that. There's a rule about that. If I don't do it right,
It's
what's
got to
gonna-
be done this
it's
way.
got to be done this way. That is impoverishment.
God himself is saying it should be done.
Right.
So when Kathy, when she talked about sentence 5, you who could help them,
Yeah.
okay, that's one side of the equation. I can help them unless I'm acting destructively and accepting their same poverty of ego identification.
Exactly.
So that's my choice at that moment,
Right.
not to accept the poverty of the ego, because the ego is all about lack.
Yep.
Not to accept that poverty, accept like salvation for myself, atonement, and then I can answer them from that standpoint. Then that stops the fight on this level, the
Yeah.
opposition on this level with others.
Right.
And I won't make the joke again.
Okay.
So any questions about that paragraph or comments? It's, he writes in such a dense way and says so much, like in one sentence, it can be hard to understand. So Kathy, did that make more sense on 5?
A little bit, yeah, but I was also wondering, this may sound crazy, bear with me, please, but it's like when you're in the action, in the moment of the interaction, this is one behavior, trying to see their call for love. But where I get into trouble is afterwards, because I like to hold on to stuff, and then my head just goes do 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 do. So if I can apply these principles to what isn't happening even at this moment,
Right.
to clear up my thinking, does that make any sense? I just,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that thumping on your head is ego,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So just apply it to yourself as well. You have everything. You have love within you. It's only ego that says you're wrong, you're bad, maybe. Only ego does that.
Right. And it goes down to your great need is instruction and perception.
Yeah.
But look about when he's developing this, look what he said in chapter 6 about the crucifixion and resurrection. He didn't defend his body
Mhm.
from attack. He did not defend his body because he knew he wasn't a body and
Right.
he wasn't poor. And he's saying to us, these very defenses are just making your ego and body real.
And making us think that we're impoverished
Right.
and not safe. Remember, salvation and safety are the same thing.
So when somebody is attacking you, like you should have put gas in the car, when they're attacking you, they're really calling for love.
Yes.
And we can answer that.
Yes.
So that is the quote unquote defense, is answer that call for love.
That's
God
the-
can't be remembered alone.
That's the real defense. Huh?
The idea to me, what pops out here is the idea of non-resistance.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the moment when that's happening, it's reactive. You want to defend yourself.
Yeah.
But if we come to learn that most things don't really matter, they really don't.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't. They just don't. and become an observer of what's going on rather than, because what's in the moment, it's hard to say that's not happening. Yeah, it is. It's really happening. But how do we deal with it in the moment? I'm trying to train myself just not to be reactive, just kind of step back and watch.
Yeah.
So I don't get involved in it and want to react to it and want to hold on to it for a long time.
Yeah.
But,
Good. Great.
So sentence 2 is saying, if he attacks, you are agreeing with this belief. So it sounds like if you're perceiving it as an attack,
Yeah.
it's sort of too late to do anything about it then, because it's happened.
You've interpreted what happened as an
attack. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like,
whereas
you
it's a call for love.
yeah. So if you're seeing it as an attack, then it's like, oh, well, it's too late now. It's sort of happened and I can't do anything about it, really.
Yeah.
Apart from forgive it and say, right, okay, next time I'll see if I can. But it sounds like it's almost like it happens too fast to change it, if you see what I mean. If you're seeing it as attack, you've seen it as an attack. It's too late.
Well, you can change your mind.
Yeah.
You can actually change your mind about what happened.
But what he is saying is the deal's already done of ego identification.
Yeah.
If you perceive it as an attack.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's really
Yes.
the only purpose in it, is to keep you identified with
Yeah.
the ego, and you make the excuse of their
So
attack.
if I believe in time, which unfortunately I do, then I think, well, that's an attack. It's too late now. I can't do anything. Forget it. Done. I've got to just wait till the next one comes around. But of course, if there isn't really any time, then you can forgive what seems to have happened in the past,
Yeah.
can't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's only this now moment. And if I'm holding it as an attack, I'm holding it now
Yeah.
as an attack.
Yeah.
It didn't. The past is over. You know what I mean? It's like the only place the attack or the past exists is in my mind now. So
Yeah.
we can change our mind at any point about what happened in what we think of as the past.
You know, that's the second 5 set of lessons in the first part of the workbook. I'm upset because I'm seeing what's not there. I see only the past. My mind's preoccupied with past thoughts. I see nothing as it is now. These thoughts don't mean anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The workbook is so tied in with this text. It's, you know, that would be just an amazing study to put them all together. We put it together in our experiences where it comes together.
Can I just say one more thing about the second clause in sentence 6? It would never occur to you to overlook their real need.
Yeah.
If you are not identified with the ego,
Right.
you will meet their call for love.
Exactly. Yeah. Connie, could you read 4, please?
Sure. This paragraph was meant for me. Recognize what does not matter. And if your brothers ask you for something outrageous, do it because it does not matter. Today's lesson really turned me,
135.
really turned me around. And basically, it's the same thing going into more depth. And I really, you know, the last couple of days or so, being out in the world again and being with family and being in all kinds of celebrations, and it's just amazing how so much comes up as outrageous, as my definition, outrageous, you know. And so I came to the conclusion this morning, you know, it really doesn't matter. After that lesson, it was really great.
Wow.
Great.
Yeah. Refuse and your opposition establishes that it does matter to you. It is only you, therefore, who have made the request outrageous, and every request of a brother is for you. Why would you insist in denying him? For to do so is to deny yourself and impoverish both. Because we're all one, and anything I do on my brother is doing unto myself as well. For to do so is to deny yourself and to impoverish both. He is asking for salvation as you are. Poverty is of the ego and never of God. No outrageous request can be made of one who recognizes what is valuable and wants to accept nothing else. So I really get this all in relation to my brother or other people. Where I'm really challenged is yesterday I went to a mass, a real mass, and I really there's so much there. I see where I have run away from religion because of all the structure and the sexism and the authority and all that stuff. And I still give meaning to all of that. And I have to look at how to not attach meaning to that.
Good.
You know, it's but I also saw how I'm where I am today because of it being a part of that early in life. Yeah, so it's interesting.
So I think what I'm gonna interpret from my own experience, what I think you're saying is that even though there's that sexism and authority and all that kind of thing, it brought you to the good place where you are now somehow. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and also I was able to feel that what the Course brings me to is what I was looking for when I was enmeshed in that environment, you know, seeking to have the love and we're all one, whereas the environment is all divisive. I mean, even the girl students and the boy students have different color caps and gowns. I mean, that seems trivial, but it's a big symbol. We're different, we're separate, we're not all one.
You're not equal.
Yeah. Yeah. And on a soul level, we're not equal. I mean, it goes deep.
Right.
And yeah, and the Course really, it has me in the place I want to be, that we are all one, and love is the answer, really.
You know, what's really wonderful about what you're sharing is that you're pointing out how they're looking for love in all the wrong places, you might say. They're looking for love through division. And that's what all ego stuff is. And that's why we respond with love, because that's what they're really asking for.
Right. So you're not denying, like the way women are treated, the unequal, you're not denying that there's a problem, but you're re-identifying what the real issue is, and solving it in that moment, by seeing it as a call for love. Remembering, I cannot go without you. You're part of me. I can't ignore you. You know, you're asking for help. You're not really attacking me. You're asking for love.
It's like the real part of us is the soul, and the physical world is where people are looking for, you know, looking for the wealth of the soul, and it just can't be found there.
Right, because there's separation. I mean, everything is about separation, not only the male-female thing, but the, you know, the bishop, the priest, there's all like layers of people. I mean, like there were 6 different layers of priests, and who holds this, what does the bishop hold, whatever that thing is called. And it's like, it's like all separate. Who
Yeah.
sits where? Who does this? It's like,
Ritual. Yeah.
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 Well, it's
You know,
more than
that's-
ritual. It's really, it's a denial of the fact that we are all one.
Yeah.
God is love. I mean, it's
You
ego.
could be,
Ego.
you could be sitting right there in that congregation and blessing everybody and being in the oneness. And on some level, the Course says they're feeling it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You know, I think the Course is a lot like the 12-step program in that it's non-hierarchical.
Mhm.
Like there is not those divisions in power.
Right.
And like AA, there's no like central authority. It's the peers themselves helping themselves, where the authorities of medicine and religion really couldn't help drunks.
Mhm.
So it was them themselves as peers helping each other. And that's what the Course is.
That's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
We're yeah. We're reading the blue book.
But non-hierarchical is really key there.
Yeah. Well, even that, even that could be ignored
Yeah.
and we go to the truth. I think
They
that's-
also say that the newcomer is the most important person in the room.
Right
So
on.
AA meetings, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So Eric, would you read 5 for us, please, and give us your thoughts?
Yep. Salvation is for the mind, and this is attained through peace.
So that's he's restating now what it said in paragraph 2 at the last sentence. What is to be saved and how is it saved? The ego is to be saved and it's saved by attack. Now he's saying it's the mind that's saved
And it's attained through
through
peace.
peace.
This is the only thing that can be saved and the only way to save it. Any response other than love arises from a confusion about the what and the how of salvation. And this is the only answer. Never lose sight of this, and never allow yourself to believe, even for an instant, that there is another answer. For you will surely place yourself among the poor, who do not understand that they dwell in abundance and that salvation is come. Wow, that's quite a paragraph. It's sort of summing up the whole ethos of the Course, isn't it, that?
Yeah.
You just need peace of mind, nothing else.
There,
And then you're rich.
It says, never lose sight of this, never allow yourself to believe, even for an instant. I think that's part of the problem. We drift out of that knowing, and we're into instants of thinking with the mental capacity, and that keeps us dragged into this other mind, doesn't it?
so this may be a place to bring this up. In that lesson, because we talked about it, right? In that lesson, it can be by myself, I crucify. It says the way that you've handled the separation problem is to keep yourself in bondage and deny your true power. Right?
Uh-huh.
And what this is saying is that we have to make the first step and set aside the conflict
Mhm.
and come to peace.
Mhm.
We have to do that because the way to recover our true power is for us to begin to use it
Mhm.
and begin to free ourselves in the moment and take that step. No, I'm not going to see it that way.
Mhm.
That's not helping me.
Mhm.
And I can free myself and I can be out of conflict. I
Mhm.
can be at peace. We've got to take that step
Yeah.
because that's part of us reclaiming our true power because we are free.
Right.
That whenever he says you're not a body, he asserts you're free. You're
Right.
still as God created. You can take this first step and you have to recover your power.
Right.
That's why And, you know, in the lessons in part 2, it says, what is sin? It mocks this idea where you turn to God and you go, how long, oh Lord, how long will you let this go on? And he says, how long are you going to believe in sin?
Right,
How long are you going to let these false ideas drive your boat?
right.
Free yourself.
And remember that idea of sin early on was identified with lack. And it's
Exactly.
at the opposite, it's in opposition to abundance.
Exactly.
So the whole thing is of the mind, it's of perception, data and interpretation. Perception is both data and interpretation.
Yeah.
How are you interpreting the world?
Yeah.
The data will be the same. You're interpreting it either with ego, which is I'm in lack and I need and I got to get, or I am so at peace and so in love and so happy. What else matters? I've got plenty to give.
So if my experience is the sole function of my interpretation, then if I change my interpretation, then everything changes.
Absolutely.
Like I'm doing this to myself.
Yeah.
This is my interpretation. And if so, I can change that.
Right. Any thoughts in addition to those? So did you see how the what and the how that I think it was Laura that read that up in paragraph 2, question is always twofold. First, what is to be saved? Second, how can it be saved? And then in the paragraph we just read, 5, sentence 3 says, any response other than love arises from confusion about the what and the how. And the what is the mind and the how is peace. That's from the first
And that's the
line
only
there.
answer. So look at that next sentence and look how strong a claim it is. Very strong claim. It says, never lose sight of this and never allow yourself to believe.
Where are you?
The next sentence after what you said.
Oh, okay.
4,
Okay.
never lose sight of this and never allow yourself to believe, even for an instant, there's another answer than the peace
Mhm.
that you can attain. Right?
Okay.
It's like not giving us any wiggle room of going, yeah, but.
Yeah, right. Okay, Dale, you're next.
6,
Mhm.
to identify with the ego is to attack yourself and make yourself poor. That is why everyone who identifies with the ego feels deprived. What he experiences then is depression or anger, because what he did was exchange self-love for self-hate, making him afraid of himself. He does not realize this. That's that number 4, including me at one point in my life, but I know a lot of people that just deny who they are, and they're sad people, and they're always searching for something.
Right.
And it seems the reason I mention that is I've tried to reach out and help them with some of this material, and it's just not received well for their background, the things that Connie was talking about, the structure, the things. So I've just decided my goal is not to judge that, just to extend them love.
Yeah.
And I've done my part.
Right
I
on.
think I've done my part.
Yeah. That's exactly what this section is talking about.
You know, and if I just would say, interject with that, Dale, and the Course is saying, just hold on to the faith and the belief that if you did that silent offering
Right.
of peace to them, of forgiveness, that at some point they will accept it.
Yeah.
You know, I gave it, so therefore they received it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, I think
trusting that.
That's a very good point, because again, it's just my perception that I offered something. All right, where's the instantaneous return? And
Yeah.
it doesn't, we're working on spirit's time, not my time. Again, that was ego
Yeah.
speaking. I extended it. Okay, come on, baby. Give me something. It didn't work that way. Anyway, even if he is fully aware of anxiety, he does not perceive its source as his own ego identification, and he always tries to handle it by making some sort of insane arrangement with the world. That's true. He always perceives this world as outside of himself, for this is crucial to his adjustment. He does not realize that he makes this world, for there is no world outside of him. As I'm reading that, I'm thinking about what Connie talked about just a little bit ago. And having grown up in a very strict fundamentalist church, it was full of structure and separation, and you had to go through a certain person to have a chance. I'm not talking about Jesus, I'm talking about a human being to have a chance of salvation. And it created a wall of, but then I knew that wasn't right. But it took all these years to come to a place and to find the right material to understand what that meant. So that's a very meaningful paragraph to me, section.
Absolutely. I mean, think how freeing, this is why there's no order of difficulty in miracles. Because if it's just my interpretation, they're attacking me. If that's just my interpretation, I can change that. Even if I don't really believe it.
That's what Jesus said.
I can give it a chance. I can say in faith, well, maybe there is another way to see it.
That was the message of the crucifixion. I
Yeah.
don't have to interpret this as attack.
Yeah.
So what do you think? I'm asking everybody here. What do you think about those last few sentences? Even if he's fully aware of anxiety, he doesn't perceive its source as his own ego identification, and always tries to handle it by making some sort of insane arrangement with the world. But then he perceives this world as outside himself. For this is crucial to his adjustment. Don't we perceive the world as outside ourselves? Then the last sentence. He does not realize that he makes this world, for there is no world outside of him. Pretty amazing, huh? It's like that lesson we did recently, if you're on the annual plan. I loosed the world from all I thought it was. And it said, you'll go as far as you can with this thought. And you may step back, but you'll come back. You'll work with it some more. And you finally get it. But here it is being presented already in chapter 12. There is no world outside our mind. If that's true, then everything is inside our mind. All true things, love, peace, joy, happiness, and its reflection in the sensory world too. So you have any thoughts about that?
Other than 10 million?
Yeah, okay.
Where does he? Yeah, no, in the next paragraph, he's going to talk about the idea of what salvation is always what you identify as and with.
Okay, so Laura is up next. And Laura, would you stop before sentence 6 and give us your thoughts so far? Because it's a big paragraph and there's a lot in it.
I will just share something quickly before I start.
Sure.
The having the world inside our mind. And I just had this image of, when you go back to school night and all the kids have drawn, like, oh, everyone draw the playground, but they're all different. And everyone has a different interpretation. Yeah. And I'm just like, so we are all here sitting in the same experience, but we all are going to draw a different picture from it. So
right.
Yeah. And that is the ego. That's all the ego is.
Yeah.
Is that singular interpretation.
Okay. If only the loving thoughts of God's Son are the world's reality, the real world must be in his mind. His insane thoughts, too, must be in his mind, but an internal conflict of this magnitude he cannot tolerate. A split mind is endangered, and the recognition that it encompasses completely opposed thoughts within itself is intolerable. Therefore, the mind projects the split, not the reality. Everything you perceive as the outside world is merely your attempt to maintain your ego identification, for everyone believes that identification is salvation.
So let's stop there.
Yeah, so It sounds to me like a healed mind doesn't project either.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It extends the love. That's all.
Extends the love. Or the world disappears. Is that the thought behind the Gary Renard book, The Disappearance of the Universe? I haven't read it. I just was wondering.
I can't comment on it.
But the point is, he's like he said in the first sentence, the real world.
Yeah.
Remember, that's been this idea that he's been bringing forward from chapter 11, the previous one. Like the real world is only where loving thoughts are true.
Mhm.
And at the beginning of this chapter, he said, fear, which is a denial of love, fear, if you give it to the Holy Spirit, like here's these terrible circumstances of unequal treatment of people.
Mhm.
If you give that fear to the Holy Spirit,
Mhm.
rather than it being a denial of love, you see it's a call for love, and
Right.
I'm answering that call.
Right.
So my experience is only of love,
Right.
and that is the real world.
So don't forget, the purpose of this course is to get us to the real world. It's not to get us to the point where the world disappears. That's God's job. That's the last step.
Yeah.
The real world is where we recognize that the physical world isn't real. Love is real. God is real. We're part of the mind of God, like that. Our mind encompasses everything in love, and yet it's still somewhat perceptual. It is perceptual. We're still using bodies. So that's the real world, and that's the goal of the course. It's through forgiveness. So it's like the forgiven world, the right thinking,
Right. So let's
true perception. Those are all the same.
So let's look at sentence 3 and give some examples of a split mind. Okay. So a split mind means both two things that are completely opposite, like fear and love.
Mhm.
They both seem to be real, right?
Yeah.
And so fear has information that can keep me safe. If we're believing that,
That's the split.
that's the split. We're believing that fear
Fear.
has information
Fear.
that'll keep me being loved or something.
Fear
So-
is salvation.
So, and the other big one is trying to find your innocence by making something else guilty.
Right.
That's the whole projection. I'll have an innocent sense of myself because my mom and dad did a terrible job raising me.
Mm-hmm.
That's making two things, innocence and guilt, which are complete opposites,
Mm-hmm.
both be real. And that's why there's a world that seems to be in opposition to me,
Mm-hmm.
because I projected that split. But if I see, for instance, my innocence tied to the innocence of who seems to be attacking me,
Mm-hmm.
then I can have an experience of love
Right.
instead of opposition.
Right.
So that's, I mean, that whole split mind, that's why giving and receiving is such a big practice in the course, because giving and receiving seems like opposites. If I give you a physical thing, it's gone from me. But if I give you an idea, I haven't lost it. And so when we understand it's the giving and receiving of ideas, then we realize there's no loss. That's why giving and receiving breaks the opposition in the mind.
So did you have any other thoughts about that first half of the paragraph, Laura?
I was just going to ask what everyone thought about sentence 5, which is everything you perceive as the outside world is merely your attempt to maintain your ego identification. For everyone believes that identification is salvation. And I'm not sure I fully understand what that means, that identification with the ego is salvation if we're thinking with ego. So how is that saving? How does the ego think that's saving? Because if I identify with the ego, is that like the example you were giving, Timothy, of like, I think that fear has value because it can inform me? Is that what we're saying, or what the course is saying in that sentence?
Well, think about, let's say that your spouse and you think you need a new house, and somebody says, we should buy right now while interest rates are low. And the other person says, no, we shouldn't sell, we shouldn't buy right now because of this and that. And you're going back and forth in opposition about ideas. Whereas, what?
Answer her question. I'm not hearing an answer to her question.
Okay, say your question again.
So I'm just trying to understand how we would think that identification with the ego is salvation.
Because it's identification with the body.
You think attack is justified?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's your body that's always threatened. I mean, that's the whole point of, choose resurrection instead of crucifixion. It's the ego's always trying to save the body.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, if we make this right decision about when to sell and buy, then we'll be safe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always about the body being made safe instead of what? The mind, right? That's the two issues in here. It's like from the ego standpoint, that's what's saved, ego body, and it's saved by attack. Whereas here, it's the mind that needs to be saved, and it's by peace.
And the ego's the whole purpose of the ego is to keep the body safe.
Exactly.
Right.
So
That's right.
identify it, but we've got it mixed up. We think that keeping the body safe is going to be salvation. And it's
And
Yeah,
that's what's the real danger.
And that's, so sentence 4, the mind projects the split, not the reality. So we think there's opposition outside of us
Instead of inside,
instead of inside.
between two concepts.
All right.
right, because if I think that there's two concepts, right away I think, oh, I'm not safe. My body's not safe, which is all crazy. I mean, when you think about it,
Right.
it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We think I am the body,
Right.
and I am actually an unlimited spiritual being, one with God and with everyone and everything. That can't be hurt. That's what we're trying to remember.
I
You wanna
remember,
Well, hang on.
I
Go
remember
ahead, Bob.
struggling with this idea, and to me, it was letting go of the body, because if I embraced the mind, there were strings attached.
What do you
There
mean?
were good things that I was going to have to be required to do that, and none of this was true, that I didn't want to do, and I didn't even know what those things were I was going to be required, and that's the old religion stepping in. But that was a part of my body identification, because if I let go, then what all this unknown stuff is going to be required of me.
Yeah, God was going to require sacrifice of you,
Yeah.
right?
And
Yeah.
suffering, and
Yeah.
you're suffering, but it's for the greater good or whatever.
Yeah, no wonder the split was kept.
No.
Laura, you want to continue?
Did that make it clear, Laura? Or
I think so. I mean, I guess to summarize it, so the identification with the ego is I'll be safe if I fix all these things out here in form that I projected,
Right.
and not if I heal my mind, which is the only thing that's real.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, number 6.
Yeah.
Yet considered what has happened, for thoughts do have consequences to the thinker. You have become at odds with the world as you perceive it, because you think it is antagonistic to you. This is a necessary consequence of what you have done. You have projected outward what is antagonistic to what is inward, and therefore you would have to perceive it this way. That is why you must realize that your hatred is in your mind and not outside of it before you get rid of it, and why you must get rid of it before you can perceive the world as it really is. Well, we're projecting anything that makes us uncomfortable in any way.
Right.
So instead of looking at the darkness and handing it over to Holy Spirit, we're projecting it. So it does feel, I guess, to more the human mind, that it's in opposition, because we are truly of light, and we think we're getting rid of the darkness by projecting it out there and trying to deal with it out in the world. And it's telling us that we must realize that this hatred and all the other, anything of fear is in our mind.
Yeah.
And if we think it's outside because we projected it, then we're not really doing anything that isn't temporary. So if I project hatred outside and I might address it in some way, it's a false solution because I haven't healed my mind and the hatred is still in there.
Yeah, and so look at this in concrete terms. If I see a mass shooting, something that just happened again, I'm seeing hatred out there. It's out there. That happened in that other city, that other person. It has nothing to do with me. I'm a loving person. If I see hatred out there, that hatred is in my mind and projected out. I could see, if I give the whole situation to the Holy Spirit, I could see nothing but a call for love and spirit, which cannot be hurt, and bodies clashing, and the bodies are meaningless. I could see it in that way. That's the miracle. That is how change happens in the world from the miraculous state of mind, is that we recognize where the hatred really is, ask for healing here, receive it here, and then we extend the love to that situation, to the shooter, to the people who are in grief, whatever, or fear.
So think about the idea of faith. And he says that miracles come through faith.
Yeah.
The goal of truth is accomplished through faith.
Mm-hmm.
So I really believe that this opposition is something in the world rather than in my mind.
Yeah, ego says that.
Right. But I'm trying to learn from the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
So through faith, I have to say, well, maybe that's not true. Even though I deeply believe it, maybe that's not true. Let me turn to the Holy Spirit.
Exactly.
And then the Holy Spirit gives me the forgiveness that heals my hate.
Exactly.
And then I can see the world differently.
So remember in paragraph 6, it says, if a person has anxiety, it's because he doesn't perceive its source. Let's say I see somebody with a gun. I feel anxiety. I don't realize it's in me. I think it's in them. I think it's about them. And the source is my own ego identification. I think because I'm a body, I can be hurt. And I always try to handle it by making some sort of insane arrangement with the world. Well, whatever it is, I'm going to call the cops, I'm going to kick the gun, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's because I perceive the world as outside myself. I'm going to skip a little bit. I do not realize that I'm making up this world, for there is no world outside me. This is a really powerful section if we're willing to take it in. And the release from this anxiety of recognizing that the conflict is within me is to give the whole thing to the Holy Spirit.
Right.
My false ideas as well as my love.
Yeah. I mean, like take the mass shooting as an example, and I'm seeing hatred out in the world.
Yeah.
That was a racist attack on those people. So I'm seeing that hatred out there. But the idea from the Course is not to deny there's a problem here.
No.
The problem, if you can, through faith, say, this is my split mind.
Exactly.
I'm believing in two completely opposite ideas, two completely opposite thought systems. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
And I can see that in myself. I can see how I'm believing, oh, well, maybe I am spirit created by God, not a body.
And so is that all those other people.
Yeah. Or we can see how we're split between those two ideas about who we are.
And until we take it in as where the source of the conflict is,
Yeah.
we're always going to be trying to make some arrangement with the world to get it to be fixed.
Right.
Whereas, I mean, this is amazing. Remember how early in the text it was going on and on about our power and our glory?
Yeah.
We have to take that to heart. We are much more powerful than we think we are.
So here's a pop quiz for this section, major theme in the course. How do you know that you've accepted true forgiveness for the situation? What is your criteria by which I've sincerely set the goal of truth?
I know.
What is it saying in this very section would be the outcome that you've actually now
Peace.
Yeah.
exactly peace.
Exactly.
Peace of mind, yeah.
The problem's in my mind and the solution is peace.
All right.
And now the conflict is gone. And now I can come from peace and address the problem or not. But,
Mhm.
I mean,
So when it's talking about the world and the outside world,
Yeah.
is it including my perception of this body as the outside world?
Yes.
yeah,
So all the physical elements of the body, including the human emotions
Yeah.
and the mental thinking, is part of the outside world, isn't it?
yeah.
Well, some of the mental thinking, it says a little bit further on here. It's our mind can hold both. Only
Yeah.
one is real. Yeah, but the mind is real because the mind is part of the mind of God.
Right, but he's really making a great point
Yes, he
about
is.
everything
I know.
is
Yeah.
within me.
Yeah,
Right.
because we get confused. We think the outside world starts at the outer part of my skin,
Exactly.
don't we?
Right.
Yeah,
But it doesn't. The body itself is a projection of the mind,
exactly.
and it's easy to lose sight of that.
Yeah,
I mean, think
that's
about
really good, Eric.
think about when you feel sick, whether emotional sickness or physical sickness, you're completely adverse to your sense of self. And that's the very time that we need to be most loving to ourselves,
That's right.
is when we're in pain. I mean, that's the very, go ahead.
This section, the thought I have is we need to be kind and patient with ourselves
Yeah.
in learning this, because we have been so trained from the outside world, from the systems, the structures in the
Mhm.
world
Mhm.
that have taught us to think totally opposite. I can see why this is called a mind training,
Mhm.
because it's, I mean, everything that, like what Eric just said about that's totally opposite of what we've been raised to think.
Yes,
Like,
it sure is.
who do oh, I feel like my head's been turned around.
No, yeah, right. You're safe. You're safe. Kathy, would you read the paragraph 8, please?
8, right? I
Yep,
said
8.
before,
Yes.
yeah, okay. I said before that God so loved the world that he gave it to his only begotten son. God does love the world, the real world. Yes, the real world. And those who perceive its reality cannot see the world of death. For death is not of the real world, in which everything reflects the eternal. God gave you the real world in exchange for the one you made out of your split mind, and which is a symbol of death. For if you could really separate yourself from the mind of God, you would die.
So there's two ideas of death right there. Just to clarify before Kathy makes a comment. Death is not of the real world. When the body dies, the being goes on. And we know, we had a friend die recently, and we know he's still here. Not that there's any evidence, we just know that he's still alive. But then that last sentence, if you could separate yourself from the mind of God, you would not exist. That's the version of death that the ego identification gives. You're gone, you don't exist, you disappear, done, compost.
See, that's really key, because the belief that you're an ego and a body is the, in the ego's world, the belief that you're an ego body is the death of your true self.
Mhm.
And therefore, you believe in this concept that I've killed what God created as perfect. And so you live in a world where things live and then they die. They live and they
Mhm.
die. And it's all just this acceptance of concepts in my mind that don't go together.
Mhm.
Love and fear, it can't both be real. I can't get my innocence by blaming the world for my problems
Right,
or my body.
right, your body even. So Kathy, do you have any comments about this paragraph?
Or maybe a question. Would death be lack too? I mean, if you're in the real world, you're not going to see lack anywhere
Exactly.
as well. And anxiety and all that stuff is just not going to exist anymore.
Absolutely.
I don't know. While we were reading this thing, if a brother asked you to do something outrageous, I just shut down. It's like, no, I maintain my right to say no to something outrageous. And I would, like that, you know? And I realized it's just my ego. And it's like all of a sudden, all that went away. Just boom.
Wow.
Cool.
This is so cool. This course is so cool.
But also remember what I said about chapter 16, where he addresses this very thing and said, but don't do something that would hurt you either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it hurts now.
Anything else on that paragraph?
I can't think of anything.
Anybody else?
What's your song? There is no world outside.
Oh, you know from Disney World, Disneyland, there's this little ride where there's all these little characters. There's no world outside. Okay, no, that's
outside my mind.
Small world.
Alan Watson wrote this one. It's hilarious. It's like if you sang this in public, they'd lock you up. But it's what is in here. It goes like, there's no world outside my mind. Da, 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 da. Yeah, right. I wish I had the words, but yeah. Okay. Let's move along. Connie, would you read 9, please?
The world you perceive is a world of separation. Perhaps you are willing to accept even death to deny your Father. Yet he would not have it so, and so it is not so. You still cannot will against him, and that is why you have no control over the world you made. It is not a world of will because it is governed by the desire to be unlike God, and this desire is not will. The world you made is therefore totally chaotic, governed by arbitrary and senseless laws and without meaning of any kind. Oh my God, that's just my my experience yesterday with, oh God, everything is, it should be this way, should be that way. Why isn't it this way? Look at all those, you get into a crowd of people even. I haven't been with mobs of people for a long time. And it's like, oh my God, look at all this crazy stuff everybody's doing, it's like, whoa. It's just, oh God. Okay. Totally chaotic. Yeah. For it is made out of what you do not want, projected from your mind because you are afraid of it. Yet this world is only in the mind of its maker, along with his real salvation. Do not believe it is outside of yourself, for only by recognizing where it is will you gain control over it. For you do not have control.
For you do.
For you do have control over your mind, since the mind is the mechanism of decision. I hate to say this, as my mother would say, but I have to admit, yesterday, there's a lot of people of different culture in this environment, in this graduation. And the way some people dress, women dress, all day long, I'm judging it, and I'm keep saying to myself, why am I judging this? Why am I judging this? Why am I judging this? And then finally I just said, this is all crazy. Why do I even care? You know, it's like the mind, it's like my mind was taking me and I was fighting it, but it just kept coming up again and again and again.
Yeah.
And it's like, I really got that sense of who's in control?
Mhm.
Is it my mind, my brain, you know, or my thoughts? Do I have control over my thoughts? It's really, and that's over a stupid thing. So what about things that really matter in the world, that are really important? You know, it's, I don't know.
The cool thing about
And everybody else is functioning the same way.
everybody is. Yeah.
It's chaotic.
Right. And so what this paragraph is saying is, we don't like the split in our mind. We don't like the hatred. We don't like the judgments and the fear.
Anxiety.
We don't like
all
it.
that.
So we cast it outside of ourselves. But since it doesn't make any sense, the world outside of us seems to be chaotic.
See,
And
because we haven't really gotten rid of it.
We haven't really gotten rid of it.
The
And
hatred's still in the mind.
so it looks like, you know, those people might be attacking you because the way they're dressed is not the way you think they should be dressed. So, you know, so you got an attack thing going. But what it's saying is, really, I think the subtext here is, in ego identification, we want to be victims.
Well, we want to see that it's the world or my body that's opposing me rather than the opposition in
Right.
my mind,
Right.
which we can change in a moment.
And you did. When you said, this doesn't mean anything, then it disappeared.
Right, but it's annoying how it keeps wanting to come back. The ego is relentless. I remember somebody once saying that in the course. The ego is relentless.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why the last section in this chapter or this book is choose again. I mean, that's always the choice we have. Choose again, choose again. I don't like the way I feel. Maybe there's another way to look at this. Choose again.
You know, I'm looking for where it said it, how we really must get rid of it. We need to get rid of the ego. It's like we have to get rid of it, but not by opposing it, but just by recognizing that it's just like smoke and you can go and blow
Right.
it away.
Yeah.
You know, it's not really anything.
Right. So that's really important, because when you realize you're projecting it,
Mhm.
right, and I'm making the world that's opposing me, you don't stop there, because you realize, and this is why it's relentless, I do have a problem.
Yeah.
But the problem's in my mind.
Exactly. And then the last sentence Connie read, for you do have control over your mind.
Yeah.
Because you have the power of decision.
Right. I could choose to see whatever I saw that was causing the conflict. I could choose to just see that as perfect, you know, love, whatever.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all perception, I guess, too.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking for love. Just give them love. Eric, would you read the last paragraph for us, please?
Okay. If you will recognize that all the attack you perceive is in your own mind and nowhere else, you will at last have placed its source. And where it begins, it must end. For in this same place also lies salvation. The altar of God where Christ abideth is there. You have defiled the altar, but not the world. Yet Christ has placed the atonement on the altar for you. Bring your perceptions of the world to this altar, for it is the altar to truth. There you will see your vision changed, and there you will learn to see truly. From this place where God and his Son dwell in peace, and where you are welcome, you will look out in peace and behold the world truly. Yet to find the place, you must relinquish your investment in the world as you project it, allowing the Holy Spirit to extend the real world to you from the altar of God. I'm struck by sentence 4, you have defiled the altar, but not the world.
Because there is no world.
Well, no, but also because the real world was what the Holy Spirit made the instant
Mhm.
we made up the
That's-
pseudo problem.
That's true.
So the Course is saying, don't think you've made the world. An illusion, yes, you've made, but don't think you've made the world, because the only world is the real one, where there's love or calls for love that you answer.
Mhm.
So when it says you've defiled the altar, is that talking about your own mind?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the place in your mind where you're one with God.
Right. So this relates back to paragraph 6, sentence 3, where he says, when he experiences that is depression or anger, because what he did was exchange self-love for self-hate, making him afraid of himself. So that's what we're hiding, is I'm afraid of myself because I believe I used my real power
Mhm.
to make me separate from love. That's why I'm afraid of myself. That's why claiming my power,
Mhm.
freeing myself,
Right.
and finding peace right now is so important,
Mhm.
because that reflects my true self.
Yeah.
That reflects self-love
Yeah.
instead of this aversion that we think the aversion is against the world, but it's really against our concept of self.
So notice that it's capital S self-love.
Yeah.
It's the Christ
The
within.
Christ self, right?
Yeah.
So that's where he's saying Christ abideth, and Christ, our true self,
Mhm.
accepted the atonement.
Mhm.
And now we're just process through
Mhm.
time, accepting those holy instances and sharing them with somebody else. That's what he said in the section before. What you forgot is you can't remember God alone.
Mhm.
You can only remember it through sharing this extension rather than projection.
So this whole section, I think, can be very challenging in the sense of there's no world outside your mind, and anything hateful and horrible is in my mind
Hard
that
to
I
do.
projected out. It can be very challenging, but right there in that last paragraph is a solution. Bring your perceptions of the world. There's a war out there. There's loss and lack. There's babies without food. Bring your perceptions of the world to this altar, for it is the altar to truth. There you will see your vision change. So in other words, go to the Holy Spirit and say, I've got something painful going on here. I think it's out in the world. I accept that it's in my mind. Help me to change my mind.
So let me refer you back in the two sections before this, the beginning of this chapter, where he says in paragraph 8 in that first section, which is the judgment of the Holy Spirit, by applying the Holy Spirit's interpretation of the reactions of others more and more consistently, you will gain an increasing awareness that his criteria are equally applicable to you. For to recognize fear is not enough to escape from it.
Yeah.
Although the recognition is necessary to demonstrate the need for escape. That's why the ego is relentless. It's always offering a solution. So the Holy Spirit must still translate the fear into truth. So fear, instead of being a denial of love, is a call for love that we answer.
Mm-hmm.
Problem solved.
So anybody we see as being unfairly treated, give love to both the perpetrator and the victim, because there's nobody there but the Son of God. And we're one with them. Any other comments about this amazing section? Well, thank you, and breathe easy knowing you're innocent, even though the whole crazy world is coming from my mind.
I know. Let me
I can
stop.
do this with the Holy Spirit.
Let me stop the recording.